Okay. Thank you. For my next trick, how is the volume level? Because I really project. Is it too loud? It's okay to say it's too loud. Okay, great. I used to teach at 7:45 in the morning, and I said none of my students ever slept through lecture. I never gave them the opportunity. So in fact, the lecture you're going to get today is a lecture that I gave to my students as their last talk, as their last lecture. And I taught nutritional biochemistry for 26 years back when I was a Badger, and I hope you don't hold that against me because I am a Tar Heel now. And I said what we taught was what happens to everything that crosses your lips. And it was super, super biochemical, and it would make all your head spin, and you'd be going, no. And we're not going to do that tonight, I promise. You're welcome. What we're going to do tonight is take what I taught them, which is how to use all that info I gave them. So you're going to be doing the same thing tonight. You're going to take all the info that you've accumulated from these seminars over the years, and we're going to show you how to use it in your daily life, or as much as I can. So I'm not going to say DNA other than like right now, so apologies to Dr. Zeitzel. So cheers to all the Thanksgiving cooks who will be too sweaty and exhausted to enjoy their own dinner. Is that me? Oh yeah. And we noticed before this began that actually that there is a distinct gender representation here tonight, and I don't think that's a coincidence. So let's be honest here. How many of you love the holidays? Okay. How many of you hate the holidays? Me. There's too much to do, right? There's too many expectations. It's crazy. I used to give my final exam on December 23rd. It was horrible. So, you can imagine cookies gone. If you got your present on Christmas Day, that was your present. Because it was just too much to do. So among all the other stresses, we all know, and I think that's why you're here, your healthy eating is going to go right down the tubes. Yep, that's Christmas for me, okay. Sometimes it feels like I'm that man. So how do we negotiate that? And the simple question is, don't these foods look great? Don't you want to be eating them? Yeah, that would be wonderful. Why aren't we? That's a lot of it, right? We're just tired. I would love to be eating this stuff every night, and it's just really hard. So the advice I'm going to give you in this first part of the talk, believe it or not, is advice that I received when I was an undergraduate back at Purdue. And this particular course of history was taught by this woman who was a professor. And she pulled us aside one day and she said, okay, enough history. We're going to talk about how to survive once you get married and you have a family and all that sort of thing. And I don't remember her name anymore, so I can't credit her, but I just want to get that out there. She was fantastic, and I've lived by these rules ever since. So what to do when I'm too tired to manage all this? And the problem with the being tired piece, of course, is that when we're tired, what we really want to eat is this stuff, right? It is true, yeah, you guys, you know all this stuff. I can leave now, right? So why do we crave the sugar? Why do we crave the fat? Why do we want the chocolate, okay? So it's because we get that dopamine reward. If you heard my postdoc last year, Robin Amos Cruz, she talked about appetite and food and reward, and that's exactly what's going on here. So that it pings our sugar receptors, it pings our fat receptors, our chocolate receptors, because I'm sure there's a chocolate receptor, particularly in the brain. And so we get that jolt of reward, and absolutely, it's a real thing, and we feel better. And there's no shame in admitting this, all right? Because it's out there. So what I want to do is help you try to figure out when these things happen, how can you take better control of your meals so that you don't resort to this too many nights during the week. Okay? It's okay to do it now and again. It's fine. I give you permission. Okay? So acknowledge you're tired and busy. And, enjoy that piece of chocolate cake. And like I just said, give yourself permission. Go easy on yourself. It's okay. Goodness me, I don't eat that perfect food every night, and I don't know of anyone who does. So forgive yourself when you decide I'm going to go for the burger because I really want that burger tonight. It would taste pretty good. Okay? You don't have to do it every night. So what started this lecture for my students was that I was making the Thanksgiving dinner, thawed the bird, pulled out all the stuff. And here was the package of gravy inside the bird, the plastic bag. And so I said, okay, kids, here's the ingredients. Water, cornstarch, for those in the back who can't read this, sweet whey solids. Well, I'm from Wisconsin. That's cheese protein. That's a byproduct of cheese making. Okay, so that's protein. Hydrolyzed corn and soy protein. That's more protein. Corn syrup solids. That's sugar, right? So the disodium inositate and guanylate. Yeah, I can say that. That's really just DNA parts, base pairs, and they add that for umami. Okay, so it gives you that umami feel on your tongue. Then wheat flour to thicken it, there's the salt. The modified food starch, that's mostly the sugar again. The caramel color, what's with that, right? Calcium caseinate, that's actually not about the calcium caseinate, it's hydrolyzed protein, so that's more umami. Oh, chicken fat. Oh, I thought this was turkey gravy. Now, onion powder, paprika, and then xanthan gum is a thickening agent, and calcium phosphate to stabilize things. And oh, by the way, there might be some flavor in there too. Boy, you really want to serve that up now, don't you? So I told my students this is how you make turkey gravy, right? Y'all know how to do this? In case you don't, just a freebie here. So you take your roaster drippings and put them into a big glass measuring cup. It has a little pouring spout, and you discard the fat layer because fat rises, right? And then I have a saucepan, and I put a half cup of these warm drippings in there, and I turn the heat on low. And then I add 1 or 2 tablespoons of flour, or I think George likes to use something else. My husband is actually the better cook in the family. Stir with a whisk and bring it to a boil. It's going to thicken. And then you just keep pouring some drippings in there and let it bubble slowly, and your drippings are warm. So it's going to cook fairly quickly, and then you can add your favorite seasonings, pepper, maybe a little garlic, because you can never add too much garlic in my book. And there you go. And that's way tastier than, excuse me, crap in a bag, right? And I will never lie to you, okay? I will call things what they are. So just simply learning to cook and make simple things is one way to get around that nonsense they're trying to foist off as food. And the reason they do that is because we're too busy, we think we can't make the time, and we're buying it. They wouldn't make it if someone out there wasn't buying it. Okay, so your secret weapon number 1, you want to write these things down. This is what the professor taught me, and I now teach you. Rule number 1, we never leave the house for the day of work or whatever without knowing what's for dinner. And the person who says what's for dinner kind of wins. Oh, come on up front, I don't bite hard. Because then it's up to the other person to answer, okay, and figure out what we're going to do. And I'll think of something is not a valid answer. All right. That way, when we come home feeling like this, we're not too tired to do something because we've already reached in. Last night we had yesterday morning we had a 30-second negotiation. We looked at the vegetables in the bin, and we had some Thai eggplant and some other things. We said, let's make a Thai stir fry. And sounds good to me, and I'll show you why that came up in a moment. He pulled out a piece of pork, and I said, no, let's have a piece of chicken with that instead. That was the negotiation. Done. Dinner is now done. I can move on to the rest of the day. It took less than a minute. Okay? So think of what's going to be for dinner tonight. Don't try to not walk out of the house without knowing. Because if you don't know what's for dinner, you're more likely to stop at Food Lion or whatever and pick up that pre-cooked chicken or that frozen pizza or stuff that you really didn't want to eat, and you didn't intend to eat it either, right? But you're too tired. And when you're too tired, again, we're back to sugar and fat land. Now, the reason this works is secret weapon number 2. This is probably the most important thing I can tell you. Have 5 to 7 recipes that you can make without thinking. Okay? Your go-to recipes. And when you don't know what you're going to do at the end of the day, and you come home and you forgot to ask the question, I'm too tired to cook, you can reach in and just start doing number 1 or number 2 or number 7. Okay? All right, so George and I sat down and we said, what are our 5 to 7 recipes that we can cook without thinking? That's them. We actually ran out of note paper on the paper I started writing this on. These are recipes we can make without resorting to a cookbook. In fact, cookbooks are just sort of a guide. And in our house, I think it's food porn, actually. We look at the pictures, go, wouldn't that be great to make that, you know? And sometimes it happens, but it's fun to read. So in blue, and they're in no particular order, actually, except in blue, the first 5 are things that we pretty much eat once a week, okay? And in our house, Szechuan broccoli, a Thai stir fry, a pasta and vegetable toss, a Chinese stir fry, and then spaghetti, because George is going to be reincarnated as an Italian. He grew up in Rochester, New York, so we're working on it. Those of you from Rochester know this. I mean, you walk through the grocery store and say, there's not enough pasta. So, and there isn't enough pasta here. You guys, you gotta. it's like a little, this much. No. Okay, but a whole bunch of other things that we make, and we probably have each of these once a month. Okay, so we've got backup plans, and now you see when we ask the question in the morning, what's for dinner before we walk out of the house, if nothing else, I've got 5 to 7 that I can say. Now people are reading the list, and so you've picked up on my slumgolian, which is a technical phrase for whatever's in the refrigerator and is looking kind of sad. Okay? So if the vegetables are looking kind of sad, we might put them in a quiche. And I will confess I'm a lazy woman, and I buy frozen pie crust, and I roll it out because I'm just not going to go there. And that's fine. That's where I choose to compromise. But almost everything else is going to be fresh ingredients. I can do slumgolian soup, and in fact, I do that every Sunday for work because I like a hot lunch. And I know that if I don't do something, I'll end up buying lunch from something, and then I've lost control of what goes in my mouth. So every Sunday, I try to go through the refrigerator. I pick out the sorry-looking vegetables. I keep either dried beans or cans of beans in my cupboard, put them in, big can of chopped tomatoes. Back when we have our house again, we actually do like to can, and we have those, but it's not necessary. And I can put it together, and I have something to eat all week, and I don't have to worry about lunch. Okay? All right. So the other thing I want you to notice about my recipes, and I'll show them again to you in a moment, and highlighting them a little differently. Most of them incorporate vegetables right in the dish. Most of them are 1 or 2 pot meals that don't require a side. And I'll come back to that too. They have flexible ingredients, my slumgolian, that use whatever's in the refrigerator. So truly, recipes are simply a suggestion, and there is no law anywhere that says you have to follow the recipe. And that food has to contain, the taco has to contain X, Y, and Z. You could put in there whatever you want. All right? And it could be all vegetables. And when I do have a vegetable that's absent from the main course, then we'll have it on the side. Could be a salad, could be just steamed green beans, whatever. Okay, so let's look at that list again. And now in blue, I have highlighted everything that is very low in meat or can be meat-free. I love a good T-bone. Okay, I am no vegetarian here. I'm a professor of nutrition, but I like meat. I just don't have a lot of it, and I don't do it every day. I choose when I want to do it. Okay, there's that forgiveness thing, all right, and that flexibility thing. So probably what, about every 3 weeks, we'll have the T-bone on Friday or Saturday night. And we get our craving, and then we're done, and we're not going to do it again for a couple of weeks. All right, and that's fine. So you can see a lot of this stuff. You could put meat in there if you like. I use meat as a condiment for flavoring and to add something to it and make sure I get my protein in there. But most of these meals, it's not the centerpiece. And again, now look at how many of these are things that are mixed together. And they're not having portion, portion, portion. Okay, so secret weapon number 3 is to liberate your meals from the meat course, the veggie side, the starch side. And now you're getting the style for what I am. It reduces your dependence on a box of crap. Okay? So myplate.gov, and actually I'm not blaming USDA at all. This goes way back to those cookbooks, remember, from the 30s and the 40s that are kind of a hoot to read, and a lot of them were put together by food companies, and the pictures are just like horrifying. But they would show you this traditional thing like this, right? There's your meat thing, so you know, okay, meat, check, right? And now we've got vegetable, yep, check, and you know, it's like an inventory on your plate. And if you don't have that item, then what happens? You go to the grocery store and you buy a box of rice-a-roni or, you know, something that you shouldn't be eating, right? The potato box on the side. Don't do that. So mixing it up gets you what you really want, which is a lot of vegetables, some grain, and then some protein. Okay? So that's my trick around that. And then I never have to stress anymore about, oh my gosh, now what am I going to do for my vegetable side? I have no idea, right? So I still get all my food targets. So here's an example. Okay, Chinese stir fry. And this looks very similar to what we would make at home. I would probably have a little less rice than that. And probably a little more veg in there. Actually, a lot more veg in there. And some meat for flavoring. Pretty tasty. Now, secret weapon number 4. How do I achieve this? So I've got, let's say you got your 5 to 7 secret weapon recipes. But it's no good if it's not in the house, right? So now, every time you go to the grocery store, you're going to have a shopping list on your refrigerator or somewhere handy where the kids aren't going to walk off with the pen, okay? And your list isn't going to walk off the refrigerator right next door to it. We recycle the magnets on the back and just tear it off and glue it onto the next pad, and away I go. I'm frugal, what can I say? And then every time you go to the grocery store, let me go back a minute. So your shopping list, every time you use one of your ingredients for your staples, right away put it on that list so you know it's missing. Okay? So the other night we used up the last of the taco shells. Okay, taco shells are now on my list. Okay. Getting close to using up my beef bouillon, it's on the list. So every time we go shopping, we do big shopping about once a month, and then we do short little trip to fill in holes that we missed, usually because we're turning over vegetables very quickly. So we'll go veggie shopping once a week or so. Buy the ingredients from your meal list every time you shop. So in our house, we always have the ingredients to make spaghetti, to make the tacos, to do the Thai stir fry, the Chinese stir fry, and in my house, they're 2 very different things. Okay, so we always have them. That way, if we're too tired, we forget to do the routine, or someone screwed up and forgot to thaw out a package of chicken breast or whatever, we can just turn around and make our meal. And now we have control over what we're putting in our mouths, and I don't have to rely on, all together now, box of crap. All right, so these become your staples. And by keeping them in your house all the time, you take control of your meals. Okay? Best advice I ever got out of college, I've got to tell you. So here's my shopping list. roughly speaking, fresh fruits and vegetables. I do a lot of stir fries. We have our staple dishes. We have them for lunch. We use them for snacks. We love farmers markets. We used to shop at the one in Madison religiously. They have a very huge one. The one here is smaller. I can get some things, but it's, I can manage. The meat, I'll show you more in a minute. I buy it in bulk and I repackage and I refreeze it. I watch for sales and I buy in bulk when it's on sale. And I buy these for my staple recipes. So they're always in my freezer. Then when I shop, any of the staples I used up from my 5 to 7, I've purchased them again. And they're there and ready to go. So you can be flexible at short notice on making a meal. And then I always keep on hand, we always keep on hand our essentials. The things, and I'll show you in a minute, our essential list. So you can follow or try something new if need be. So the other rule is you never shop when you're tired, because otherwise that's what your cart looks like, right? It's full of Twinkies. So nay, right? And it's true. Because, and I gotta tell you, Food Lion, Harris Teeter, whole paycheck, they all bank on you coming in at the end of the day's work when you're too tired, and what do they put in front? All that enticing good stuff that smells terrific. So they're preying on your weak will. It's true. So try not to shop when you're tired. Take your shopping list to reduce your impulse shopping, and maybe only one bar of chocolate will slip in instead of, the whole Hershey's thing. All right? Which means you do have to carve out time to shop, and that can be tricky. And that's why we tend to do it on a monthly basis, and then we know what vegetables we need, and the veggies we do on a weekly basis, plus whatever emergency staple we've run out of from the big 5. So here's my shopping list essentials. Whoa, and I'm living in a little apartment right now. But we have about 6 types of meat, and I'll show you in a minute what we keep around, Hamburg, pork butt that we chop up, chicken breast, 1% milk. I'm from Wisconsin, so it's butter every time, and we're not ashamed of it. We love it. Land O'Lakes, okay, that's the best, right? Because they don't add water. Same thing, sour cream, heavy cream. We have at least 4 different types of cheeses in our refrigerator. That's sort of a minimum. And then in the middle, we've got sauce and paste and crushed tomatoes for soup or spaghetti or whatever. But you'll figure out what this list is for your family and your household and what you folks like to eat. Okay? So there we go. On the far right side are the condiments and the flavorings. Onion and garlic, a couple vinegars. I'll come back to olive and canola oil. A little bit of shortening because George makes the best biscuits on earth, I gotta tell you. Rule of 4 different types of mustard, no more at a time. So that's what we've got. The other thing is, how many of you know about Penzies? Yes. If you don't know, there's the address. They're based out of Wisconsin, out of Milwaukee. And he's a spice broker. And he made, it's family owned, they make all the spices for all the sausage companies. And you may have heard we have 1 or 2 Germans in Milwaukee. And so they do them for Johnsonville and all the other companies that make the sausages up there, Clemmy and the like. And the family business spun out from there. The kids said, well, people like to buy this stuff too. And they started going in. We had gone into their Milwaukee store, and we walked out with truly a grocery bag full of spices and herbs and that. And they said, do you have a restaurant? And we said, no, we just really like your store, but we're over in Madison, 90 miles away. And about a year later, they put in one of their first stores in Madison. So, and they've been expanding ever since. So wonderful place. What's nice is the spices are fresh, the prices are super reasonable, and your food tastes so much better. Okay? So go check them out. A lot of salt-free options too. Secret weapon number 5. If you have the space, get yourself a storage freezer. And this is a picture of ours. Okay? So we keep it in the lower level. And what you'll see is I've got 4 bins, and one is for Hamburg, and one is for pork, and one is for chicken, and one is for other meats that are all mixed up. That way we can find whatever we need. And so when we go down and we go pick up 3 chicken breasts and a couple packages of pork, and we transfer them upstairs into the upstairs freezer. That way I can find it right away, because I'll bet you never have the problem that I have, which is, I go into the freezer upstairs and I find something that, was like 2 years old, right? So this helps that situation, and it lets me take advantage of sales, okay? And then in a moment I'll show you something else that lets me do, which is this. Do you know how many of you have one of these? Aren't they the best things? So my sister-in-law twigged us onto this. It's a food saver, and what it does is it vacuum seals whatever you put in a plastic pouch. And there's a variety of things, but the key here is it pulls a vacuum first before it seals. That gets rid of freezer burn or reduces freezer burn, but more importantly, when you forget to thaw something for dinner, because that never happens, right? You can just put this chicken breast in the bag, in the hot water, in your sink, and it thaws like that, because there's no air around it. Wow, that changed our lives, I have to tell you, because now if we forgot something, it wasn't off to the brew pub or the restaurant or whatever. So I really recommend these, and I don't get a dime for saying that. So items can be easily dated. You can freeze single meals in single portions, so now you control your portion size, which is great. Thaws quickly. And you all know that frost-free freezers like what you have upstairs in your freezer are damaging to the foods. You don't want to keep something in there more than a month, because the way a frost-free one works is it slightly thaws your food and then refreezes, and it slightly thaws it and it refreezes. And when it's slightly thawed, that's when it pulls the moisture out during that cycle. So you don't want to use it for the long term. Keep it full to limit your costs, and a good way to do that is to take empty milk cartons or empty plastic jugs or whatever, fill them with water, stick them in there to fill up the empty space, or bread. Okay? So I like to, we love pesto, and so every fall I buy before the freeze hits, so except I'm in North Carolina now, but we would buy like 10 things of basil and make up a whole big thing of pesto, and then I freeze it in ice cube trays and then put them in a Ziploc, and then we pull out a couple cubes when we want a meal. And you can do that with a lot of different things. Okay. So secret weapon number 6 is learning to read your food labels. How are we doing on time here? Let me just look a minute. All right, 30 minutes. So this happens to be for milk, but I want to show you a few other things. And I know you've seen the food label talk before. Okay. So what I pay attention to on this label, I don't even use all the info here, and I'm a nutritionist. I pay attention to how many servings are in the container, because right now it's just 2 of us, and I know the 2 of us are going to be eating that container. So what am I really getting if I split it between 2 of us instead of this unrealistic portion size that's on the box? Okay? I mean, a big can of tomatoes, that's 5 or 6 servings. So the sodium looks good for 1 person, but if we divide it in 2, oh boy. So I look at the sodium content, I look at the sugar content, and I'll show you something in a minute about that, then cholesterol, the trans fats, and then fiber and calcium if I'm worried about that. So but those are all spelled out on the side. And I don't pay personally too much attention to the percentage, because I can keep in my head what I'm looking for. And basically I like to see my sodium under 100. It's just a good rule of thumb. And I like to see my fat just low, and I don't like to see much in the way of sugars. And that's sugar, not carbohydrate. Okay. And I don't worry really about the vitamins in that too much, because frankly most of us are not vitamin and mineral deficient. So you may know this, but ingredients must be listed in order of abundance. That is the law. So when you read the label, start at the beginning to see what's disappearing from your food. So this I just grabbed off the internet. They're 2 shots of a Prego tomato sauce, which I would personally never buy, because it's easy to make tomato sauce, right? And they had changed their label. But what I wanted to highlight here, what's the difference between the new and the old label? Here, we have higher up salt and sugar, and then the sugar has shifted down. The salt didn't. Okay, but the sugar shifted down, and so instead of having 6 grams of sugar per serving, now it's 7. How did they do that, folks? Well, let's take a look. Tomato, soy, dehydrated onions, sugar, right up there. So, but hey, they're saying it's 100% natural, so this must be good, right? The label says. But so you gotta watch those labels, because they can legally say certain things, but it's a partial story. It's not the whole story. Okay. Oh, by the way, that jar says it has 6 servings in it, but it's a half cup per serving, which you know how much is a half cup. Nobody's going to be eating a half cup. So 480 milligrams of sodium, it says on the new one, and so double that probably, right, per person? That's a gram right there. All right. So is this a healthy choice? We actually buy this bread. And I was looking at it in preparation for this talk. Looks pretty good, right? Whole grains, 12-grain bread. Yum. 36 whole grains per 2 slices. 36 grams, excuse me. Didn't say fiber. It said whole grains. 9 grams of protein. I'm totally not worried about being protein deficient. Neither, I think, are most of you. No high fructose corn syrup. Oh, that sounds like a good choice, right? Okay, so you need to be a spy here and learn how to interpret all the hidden names that are on the label. So let's look at that label. Well, where was the whole grain? Well, it's actually whole wheat flour, so it's really finely ground, and I'm losing some of my fiber benefit here. Then it says water and sugar. So right away, sugar is the 3rd ingredient. But wait, they said there was no high fructose corn syrup. So that meant it was good, right? Nah, they just swapped it out for sucrose. Big deal. It's still sugar. And then wheat gluten. Okay, that's great. To give the bread the agents it needs. And now here's all the whole grains they've added in there. I won't read that. But after flaxseed here, let's see if I can get there we go. Big button in the middle. There we go. Cellulose, fiber. So this has so little fiber in it, they had to grind up paper and put it in. And that's legal, by the way. It's an approved product. It's just cellulose. But yeah, that's true. So soybean oil, yeast, salt, preservatives, and that's fine. Sorbic acid is actually good. It's a very short fat. It's not going to do you any harm. And then monoglycerides and the like. So they're adding back the fiber to it to bring it to the high fiber. Interesting, huh? Okay. So I want to say a word about the mysteries of sugar, because everybody now knows high fructose corn syrup, evil, right? Bad, bad, bad. Well, not strictly true. These used to confuse my students a lot, because I'd explain to them about fructose and how we use it and metabolize it. And then they'd come back, and the smart ones who were right on top of it would say, but wait a minute, high fructose corn syrup, you said, is made of fructose and glucose, and that's exactly the same thing that sucrose is made of. So what's the problem? And they'd say, aren't they the same thing? And I'd say, yeah. And they'd go, They think about it. And they say, and don't I eat a lot of fructose in fruit? And I said, yeah. They think about it. And then they figured out that the problem it's not the fructose, it's not the glucose, it's the fact that it's cheap. And when it's cheap, they can use a lot more than they used to, because sucrose is expensive. Okay? And guess what? We all like to buy sweet things. Right? Yum, right? So the reality is they're only giving us what we, the consumer, are asking for with our pocketbooks. And the same thing is true of salt. They're putting things into the food, and we're buying them because if you do the flavor testings, they come out on top. All right? So this is kind of like our tongues and our bodies harming ourselves, or misleading, I should say misleading ourselves. Okay. But you need to know, because of this, they've been lobbying to change the names. And so now you will see a whole bunch of sugar forms under different names. So keep an eye out for maltodextrin, for corn sugar, for partly hydrolyzed starch or cornstarch or something. All of that is basically variants of the same. And the problem is it's cheap. Therefore, it's everywhere, and we're eating way more than we ever used to consume. And the biggest offenders of this, yogurt, that healthy yogurt, it's one of the highest sources. It's in a lot of breads. We just saw that. Granola bars, salad dressing, and soft drinks and a whole bunch of other stuff where you would expect to see it. But it's hidden sugar, and that's the problem. So, healthy choice, Nature Valley yogurt chewy granola bars. Yeah, right? I mean, Nature Valley. I know I've set this up, right? That's good. It's yogurt. Yogurt good, right? Strawberry is naturally flavored strawberry. That's good. Oh, I hope this isn't sold by Dole. Huh? Oh, dear. Okay. It's low in sodium. 95 milligrams per serving. A serving is a bar, so that's good. But now let's look at that label. What does the label say? Everything in yellow is sugar. So we have sugar here. Here's fructose. Here's corn syrup. Here's sugar. Here's honey. Here's dextrose. They forgot when they didn't know that maltodextrin, that I got this from, is also a sugar. So it's a sugar bomb. This is a sugar bomb. Healthy choice? Oh, I forgot one. Did I miss another one? Oh, the malt extract, yeah. Although I sometimes think that's a little umami too. So, and then we have yogurt powder in there. So it's not actually yogurt. And carbohydrate choices. It counts as 2 servings of carbohydrate, this 35-gram bar. It's huge. Not such a healthy choice. But it's surrounded with this healthy halo, and you think, oh, granola, yogurt, nature, good. No. Okay, so enough of that. We were going to talk about the holidays. Remember the holidays with Killer Santa? Okay, so let's apply the rules to the holidays. So the first thing to remember is food is not love. I used to do a lot of animal rescue work, and we would see a lot of obese pets because they would give food treats to their pets because they loved the reaction the pet gave them, It's true, they love sugar and fat too. They got the same tongues that we've got. So just keep in the back of your mind, we show love in part by preparing food and meals. But remember, it's not love. Love is love. So we can kind of redirect the conversation a little bit in how we use food selectively to show the love. I'll be frank, my stepmother is a real notorious person on this particular point. So let's just remind ourselves that being together is love and creating new memories is love. I don't remember what was necessarily on all the Christmas dinners in the past, but I remember my Uncle Hank being there, who's no longer here, and my Aunt Mary and Mary Louise and all of that. That's the memory I want to keep. Okay. So one thing you can do is to think about making dishes that honor people who are no longer with us in my family. So every time I see German potato salad, I think of my Grandma Smith, because that was just something I associate with her and summer picnics. She made a mean German potato salad. I don't touch Jell-O or desserts or that sort of thing, but for Thanksgiving or for Christmas, once a year we trot out her green Jell-O, Cool Whip sour cream recipe, and it's good. And we all have a spoonful, and we've done it for the year. But that brings her back to us at that special time. My stepmom makes homemade noodles every year with just noodles and water because she went through a very difficult period where it was just 3 and her children. And they didn't have a lot of anything. But she could make them. She had flour, she had water. She could make them noodles in a pot. And so to this day, for Christmas Day, they always have her big pot of homemade noodles. And everyone has a spoonful, and they remember that time, and they remember everybody together, and that's the memory. So see, you can change the conversation about the food choices you have at the meal. Okay. Another rule, eat when you, oh, was there a question? I'm sorry. Okay. Another rule is to eat when you're hungry. So the stomach says, we can't eat a whole pie, we just can't. And the eyeballs say, we can and we will. Oh no, and he's just terrified as this huge pie's coming. So eat while you're hungry and not by the clock. So I'm going to pick on Sally one last time because she's someone that has to have a big meal and a big family because it's linked up to a lot of emotional issues for her. And I accept that and I understand where she's coming from. And that's fine. But the one piece that drives me crazy is that we have the meal at 1 o'clock and then we lay in a semi-coma, while the lions whip the bears. And because we're in Michigan. And and then we put the food away and all that sort of thing. And then at 5:30 she says, who's ready for dinner? And she goes back to the refrigerator and does your mom do this too? And she starts hauling all the food right back out again because she thinks we're all still 5 years old. And that we still have the metabolism of a 5-year-old. And she's got great grandkids now, so that's not happening. So listen to your appetite and don't eat just because it's X o'clock. You can pull some things out for the young ones because they need to eat, but that doesn't mean that everybody else needs to eat at the same time or with them, okay? So give yourself permission to say, I'm good, thanks. Here's another thing. So I haven't talked yet about all the parties we're going to have to go to in the next couple weeks, right? And somebody else has prepared food and we're standing around nibbling and socializing and that sort of thing. And it's easy to fall into some eating traps without being aware of things. So here's one secret, is to learn the protein trick. How many of you know this trick? Yeah, this is a goodie. If you eat a little bit of protein first, that'll stave off your appetite because protein has a huge satiety effect, which means that it dampens your hunger impulse. I keep a bag of peanuts in my desk drawer at work. And if I'm feeling a real pinch, then I'll get, a tablespoon out, that's my timer. And I'll have a little something, and that'll keep me going for a couple hours. So you're going to an event, there's going to be a lot of food there, you're not really interested in eating that food, have some nuts or a slice of chicken or some cold cuts or something ahead of time. Here's another trick, use a smaller plate. People put whatever on their plate to match the size of the plate. So if you use a slightly smaller plate, what will happen, because visual cues always override hunger cues, you'll eat less. How many of you know the work by Brian Wansink, who's on the faculty at Cornell? Really interesting guy. He studies how people eat, and his book is called Mindless Eating. I recommend it. I don't get a dime off this one either. And he's done all sorts of studies to show that people don't think about their food. And the bowl reminds me that he did a study, brings the undergrads in, gives them a soup bowl, and says, eat as much as you want until you're full. And what he found was when he had a tube underneath the table and kept refilling the bowl, they kept eating. They kept eating. And he's done the same thing with the bowl of Chex Mix, that people eat, or M&Ms, depending upon the size of the bowl, and they eat until the level goes down to a certain level, and they say, I'm good. So they're not really paying attention to the stomach thing. So the trick around this, use a smaller plate. Put the Chex Mix in a smaller bowl. Okay? So the other thing is prioritize your calories. That way you can save some for the treat. So veggies, crudettes, the fruit, we had wonderful things here this evening. Pick some protein because they'll give you your satiety feeling and make you feel satisfied and full. Cheese is great, but it is very salty. Keep that in mind. Then choose your treat food. Okay, I've eaten a lot of really smart calories. Now I've saved up some, and where do I want to spend my extra? Okay? And that's your reward for that. So quiz time. What's the most common fat consumed by women? Did you say popcorn? That's what it is for me. Me, it's popcorn. It's the salad dressing. Mm-hmm. USDA will back me up on this one. So you want to watch the label because a lot, and I'll bet a lot of you choose the light dressing, right? Yeah, I stopped because look at the light dressing. Water, oil, and then maltodextrin. Okay. Buttermilk, sugar, salt, some spices, modified food starch, more sugar. Okay. These things are sugar bombs, and I can taste it. I don't know about you when I eat it. I use regular fat dressing, or even a better choice is vinegar and oil. Okay. Well, but let's talk about MSG at the end. Okay. It's not a lot, but it adds up. But how big is that serving? It's 2 tablespoons. How many people will put 2 tablespoons on there? Yeah, exactly right. So, okay. Practice mindful eating is another good trick. Just be aware of how you're eating. Okay? Be aware of nibbling. I know he's adorable. I picked him up for that reason. Push the bowl or plate away or sit where that bowl of nuts isn't. I promise you, I will go through the bag of sour cream potato chips. I just love those things. I can't keep them around, and I try to control the portions. It's so easy to fall into that habit, and we all do it. So again, calories are investments, so choose where you spend them. Change your mindset. When I see a bottle of soft drink, I see candy. I call soft drinks liquid candy. It's a complete turnoff for me. Ugh. I can't. That's a pound of fat right there in that guy's hands. So that's 3,500 calories, and that's the equivalent of 20-ounce bottles of Coke. That's just less than 3 sixes. Those calories add up fast. It's liquid candy. You don't need it. And don't get me started on the subject of Southern sweet tea. Y'all, what are you doing to yourselves? God! Yeah, I'm a Yankee. All right. But let's make some healthy choices when we cook. For cooking, choose canola oil. It's monounsaturates. It's very a healthy choice. It's neutral. And then olive oil. Those are the fats. Those are the oils I keep in my house, and I threw everything else out. Choose butter, not margarine. Okay. And choose oil and vinegar, not that low-fat dressing. And that way you don't get those sugar calories. Yeah. Pardon? I'd have to look at that. I don't know if it's as neutral as the canola. I don't remember. I apologize. Can we save that for the end? Oh. Great, thank you. It was smart what?
Smart balance, margarine.
Oh, okay, we'll talk about that. Great. So Christmas cookies, I've just got a couple more. Oh, I love Christmas cookies. And a happy memory for me is making lots of Christmas cookies with the family, with my sister, with my mom. But there's a small problem with Christmas cookies because they got to go somewhere. So what I do now is I give them away and make them someone else's problem. I take them to work. We do cookie exchanges. You don't have to eat them. And I get I also don't make all the recipes we used to make either. We've got probably a dozen, and I'll just pick maybe 2 each year that I do, and we rotate through them. And we have an old tradition in my house of a bread that my grandmother baked. She was Polish, busha bread we called it. And so that's what we do now. We don't even do cookies anymore. My sister comes and she bakes these risen breads. It's much like a challah bread, and that's what we enjoy. Beware of the alcohol, okay? So we forget how many calories are in alcoholic beverages. In the holidays, we tend to drink more. A craft beer, and I'll preface this, I love a really good IPA. I like beer. But wow, 220 calories in my IPA. Yeah, I know. And that's a pint. That's just a pint. American pint. Wine, so a lot of women drink wine for this reason. It is lower in calorie. The hard liquor is lower in calories, sure, but not what you mix it with. So be careful. And tonic water, by the way, contains sugar. Use club soda instead. Get lots of sleep, because sleep disruptions affect your metabolism. The data are so clear about this. Get a good night's sleep. People who work alternate shifts, people who have interrupted sleeps, it changes your hormones, your circadian rhythm. You become insulin resistant. It increases your risk for diabetes. It increases your risk for obesity. One of the best weight loss management things you can do is get a good night's sleep, believe it or not. Exercise, go for a walk after dinner. Keep your, you got a little time before the Lions beat the Bears, so keep your thermostat a little lower. Put on a sweater. Shivering burns lots of calories. You don't have to keep the house overheated. It's good for the young ones too, right? And remember, your fat burner is your muscle. So the more muscle you have, the more fat you burn, because the favorite energy of muscle, when you're all sitting here, y'all are burning a lot of fat because your muscle is well oxygenated and it can burn fat. Exercise helps you to burn sugar and then high fat. Okay. So my final admonition, eat food, not too much, mostly plants. We all know where that came from, I think. And I thank you for your attention, and I think we've got a lot of questions. Now, hopefully you feel a little better about surviving the holidays. So we had a question about the margarine, and then we had a question about...
I just wondered about smart balance, I guess you call it margarine or whatever, butter spread that we all use.
So I don't like it, but I'll tell you why. Because I like butter, and I like natural products, and I get the CLA, the conjugated linolenic acid, from the butter that you're not going to get from the margarine. Well, what they've done with that margarine is they've pulled out the trans fatty acids, which makes it smart, but you've lost the CLA, which is something that has been shown to help insulin resistance and obesity and weight loss. It's a naturally occurring fatty acid that cattle make when they're grass-fed. So, yeah, I just think the butter tastes better too.
But is
So,
it safe for you as far as
yeah,
cholesterol and
yes.
advertises?
Yes, because what they've done is they've put in sterols, which reduce your cholesterol absorption in your gut. And then, so that's kind of the fiber piece. And then they've pulled out those trans fatty acids. But I look at the margarine, I look at the butter. I
Well,
just,
I love butter too.
Yeah.
There's more calories in it.
Yeah, but it's more, I could argue it's more flavorful, so you need less. But it's personal preference. But it's a smarter choice than straight margarine. So, sure. There was another, remind me.
I hear a lot of people these days saying that coconut oil is absolutely so good for us. It is absolutely, there's so many health benefits. I'd like to get your commentary.
It's fat. It's fat. So for the back of the room, coconut oil. It's a marketing ploy to sell coconuts from tropical. I mean, a couple years ago, it was palm oil. So coconut oil, like palm oil, is very rich in saturated fats. Okay? So saturated fats don't oxidize the way that PUFAs do, so that's good. Saturated fats are kind of, if they're really short, they're metabolized more quickly, but they got to be done something to them, and doesn't mean they're going to be burned quickly. So they're still going to go into storage. They certainly don't melt the way that some of the purveyors would like you to think it will lose weight. So.
There's whole books written
Oh, I know.
on how good it's for your brain.
Oh, yeah.
And the other things. I mean, there must be something to that.
No. So it's, I won't lie to you. I'll never lie to you. What it is they've noticed the biochemical reality that these very short fatty acids are digested more quickly. They are taken up by cells and put into the mitochondria more quickly. Okay? We know this. We actually use these short fats for people who are on feeding tubes. Because when they're eating totally off a feeding tube, these are the fats that their body can use quickly. So that's great. but you're not on a feeding tube. And the only way you're going to burn that fat in your mitochondria is if you're exercising. Okay? If you're not exercising, it doesn't give you a pass in terms of being able to use that fat. And so your body will treat it like any other fat, and what you don't use goes right here or goes right here. So, and then what I've seen is people tend to use more of it than they might regular fat too, which sort of defeats the purpose. So moderation, I cook a lot with coconut milk because I make a lot of Thai food, but I have it once a week, maybe twice a week. Same story, moderation in all things. Thoreau was the best nutritionist ever. Thoreau, Henry David Thoreau, moderation in all things.
I have a 19-year-old daughter who's chosen a vegan diet. Just what's your impression of a vegan diet? Are there I would like your take on it.
It's great. It takes more work. It's hard work to do, but it actually is a great choice. It's much lower in fat, tends to be. It's lower in protein, and most of us eat too much protein anyway. And it tends to be richer in whole grains. So if that's a strategy to adopt a diet that's lower in fat, lower in protein, and rich in whole grains, go for it. There are many roads to that combo. Yeah, good luck to her. Oh, that was the question, MSG. So MSG is glutamate, monosodium, because it's got one sodium on it. What is glutamate? You're close, though. It's a part of protein. It's an amino acid. It's just an amino acid. We all make it. It's a non-essential. We make buckets of it in every cell in our body. So when you eat a little MSG, what it does is it triggers umami on the tip of your tongue because it's a really abundant part of protein. So that's why it's added to food, and also because of the sodium on it. So think foods that have MSG, I cook a lot of Asian, as you gathered, often will have MSG in there for the salt and the umami. You don't need it, okay? Is it going to cause brain spasms or whatever? No, but a person might be more sensitive to the source of that MSG, which is often soy, because that MSG had to come from somewhere. My sister is somebody who cannot tolerate soy. And so she gets a reaction to it, but it's because she knows it's coming from a soy source. But you've got grams and grams and grams and grams of glutamate in the bloodstream. It's actually one of the most abundant amino acids in your bloodstream. So, did you want to follow up?
Do you believe that MSG crosses the blood-brain barrier, comes into your blood, and causes brain damage, and speeds up the growth of cancer cells that you have in your body?
No, we can talk. Yeah. Yeah, so the question is it associated with migraines? Does it cross the blood-brain barrier? That sort of thing. Well, glutamate is a neurotransmitter. So the last thing you want is a neurotransmitter to cross from your blood into the brain, because that would screw up all the signals. So glutamate doesn't cross. Glutamine does, but that's a different shape of it. And so there's actually a barrier there. Are there people who have, a problem with the BBB that can cross? Well, maybe, but I promise you, you're not eating anywhere near as much glutamate as is circulating in the bloodstream, because glutamate levels in the bloodstream are on the order of high micromolar versus what you would get from the diet, and the glutamate that you consume hits the liver first, and the job of the liver is to clean up on it anyway. So, very unlikely. Yeah. Well, I prefer butter, but it's it's a healthy oil choice for the two of them. I don't know why somebody would buy it, but I'm a butter person, so excuse me. That's just the way it's going to be. I keep knocking my mic. Yeah. It's because of the sugars. Read the label. Read the label. If it's low sugar, we're golden. look and see what it says. So read the label. If there's added sugar in there, then you're good. Mm-hmm. Well, it shouldn't be low in sugar, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and look at the flavorings and what's in their fruit. I like the low-fat little yogurts, Dannon things, 100 calories, because I know I'm getting 100 calories. I know I can metabolize the sugar fine so far. But I've just one, and it's maybe twice a week. So, but I prefer whole, plain yogurt too. I just like that taste. I don't know. Have you seen the structure of stevia? Whoa! It's like this big. I mean, Food Babe must be going, no. It's enormous. You know, it's supposedly it's grass. People have eaten it for a long time because it comes from a plant. It's surrounded by a healthy halo, but we don't actually know. Oh, I'm sorry. Generally recognized as safe. So there's a whole list of about 3,000 items that we add to food, like baking powder, baking soda, salt, and that. And back in the 50s, when they started really clamping down on items that are added to food because of cyclamates, so they passed the Delaney Amendment in Congress, and they said, okay, if you add anything to a food that isn't a food, you need to list it on the label. But then they said, so many of these things we've been eating all along, and they appear to be fine, like salt and baking soda and maybe stevia. And so we're going to call it generally recognized as safe. And so that's where that fell under. And there's a list of about 2,000 of these things that we eat and have eaten and added to food.
How much protein do we need?
Oh, I should know this number, and I don't. I apologize. Reality is, let me think, probably for someone your size, 70, 80 grams a day, way less than we consume, okay? If somebody is like doing a lot of weightlifting and bodybuilding, they think I need to consume a lot of protein. But the reality is when you do that exercise, you're increasing your calorie intake anyway, and so that protein will come along naturally. So you don't need that extra protein supplement. Will eating extra protein reduce muscle mass loss? I'm now 57, I think about these things. So if I just eat protein, will it reduce my muscle mass loss? No. I need to exercise because it's exercise that builds and maintains your muscle. You can easily achieve your requirement just with, regular meal planning. We say the deck of cards sort of thing for the meat, twice a day you're golden. So, yeah. Anything else? Yeah. And then. It wouldn't burn fat, but what you've done is you've given your body an alternative fuel with the protein. And so by eating the protein, because it's the secret isn't the protein, it's that it has little to no sugar, right? Right. So that's the real trick. So by not having sugar, your body says, oh, I need sugar, my brain needs sugar, where am I going to get the sugar from? So you have reserves in your liver and your muscle. Well, only your sugar in your liver feeds your brain. But if there's not much of that, then you got to go somewhere else. And the choice is fat, but your liver can do the magic trick of turning protein into sugar. And so you see by feeding the high protein shake, what it does is it tricks the liver into making the sugar and then drawing on the fat to complement that. And it's the same basis for like the Atkins diet that everyone talks about. Well, if you're thinking really hard, lots of sugar can't hurt. I could use some right about now. So the question was applesauce, and the label said unsweetened natural. Okay, well, natural doesn't mean anything, really. It's a marketing tool. So what you want to look at the label, they did have added sugar because it was on the label. Now where did the added sugar? But it could have been from juice. So look at the label. Now of course, apples contain sugar, right? So you're going to get the sugar that's in there. And so I think what you're asking is, did they add more than what's in the apple? And the label will tell you that. So if they don't, if the label says, just pureed apples, then you're golden. And that's that, yeah. So, but if they say juice added or that sort of thing, that's the sugar. I forget where I saw that not too long ago on a food product. Yeah. No. Yeah. So the question is, yogurt, calcium, great choice. Milk, calcium, great choice too, as are vegetables that are good sources of calcium, like kale. And there's nothing wrong with the calcium pill, because they're all, despite what the manufacturer will tell you, they're all pretty much the same in terms of absorption efficiency. So, and especially as ladies, we need to really get the calcium.
So with fat and sugar thing, it seems like if you use full fat dairy as opposed to low fat, you would actually, because it's more protein, you would have more, it would force your liver to make more sugar. I mean, is there a benefit to using full fat as opposed to low fat dairy?
No. Okay, so the question is the difference between low fat and regular dairy, the Wisconsin cheesehead here. So the protein content between the skim, the low fat, and the whole milk doesn't vary. You'll get the protein regardless. The difference is in the fat. And the reality is most of us don't need the fat in the whole milk. So the skim, the 1%, great choices. That's a satiety effect. It makes you feel fuller. Fat has a fullness factor. Nuts will do the same trick. Yeah. Anything else? Yeah, I'm sorry. Hey. Yeah, so paleo diet. Well, they didn't actually eat that diet for one. Okay, it's another marketing tool. It's very similar to Atkins, and what we worry about is all the fat that comes along with that. Another problem is your liver and your kidney isn't actually designed to handle that much protein. So we didn't, it's problematic for a whole bunch of reasons. It's not ecologically sound either to eat all that protein, right? Because it's going to be cows that have to be fed on grain that probably should be better spent feeding people. So that gets into that whole thing too. Does it work? Well, protein has a high satiety effect. The fat that comes along with it has a high satiety effect. So it's a trick. It's just a trick. And there are safer ways to accomplish the trick. So, another question. Anyone else? Last one, maybe?
Do you have any suggestions for someone who has trouble assimilating fats and that might be getting cheated on absorbing their fat-soluble vitamins?
Yeah, so a good place to get those might be a yogurt, because yogurt's, a whole yogurt, not the reduced fat yogurt, because those will have the fat in there, and the fat in dairy products is super absorbable and super digestible because it's in my cells. Okay, glass of whole milk, right? Does the fat rise to the, do you get, when you pull out the milk from the jug, let me rephrase that. Yeah, because I'm getting myself in trouble. Pull the milk out of the jug and you look at it. Do you have a big fat, thick layer on top of fat? You don't. It stays suspended. And that's because it's so digestible. It's in little tiny particles that your tongue can start digesting, and then your digestive enzymes. That's why babies drink milk, because it's such digestible fat. So that's a good trick to use to make sure you absorb those. Yeah. All right, we've run past, so I think we better, they've yanked my chain. But thank you very much. I hope you survived the holidays. It's been a good audience.